Thank you all so much for coming tonight. I am overwhelmed watching this film. It's terrifying, but this is information we need to know. And we are very, very grateful to our good friend Trevor Loudon for bringing us this information. What a courageous man. And I caution all of you that we need to watch his back and protect him too. And now it's my great honor to introduce to you our good friend, Trevor Loudon.
Well, thank you very much. I just thought I might take a couple of questions or whatever from the audience. The gentleman here, for a start.
Hi, Prince. I have, for at least 8 years, maybe I can't remember anymore, wherever I get a chance, whenever I get the chance, and any of these, not these, but yet, campaign rallies and so forth, shouting, Sharia law must not be tolerated in any form whatsoever, and I believe that that's not being said enough or listened to. You agree?
Yeah. Well, I think Mike Waller made the point very well in the movie. See, when I came to this country, and I'm sure that I know there are other immigrants here, you have to sign an oath saying that you have never been involved with any communist or communist or Nazi group seeking to overthrow the United States Constitution. Yet if you believe in Sharia law, you effectively are seeking to overthrow the Constitution of the United States. So why should you be allowed in this country if the communists and the Nazis are not? So I think this should apply right across the board to Muslim immigrants to this country. Anybody who is supportive of Sharia should simply not be allowed in here. That's the end of the story. Amen. This gentleman just here.
Yeah, would you support a total pause on all Muslim immigration? Because anybody would say, no, we don't support Sharia. I think the only thing that makes sense is
Can you speak louder?
Yeah, the gentleman's saying, oh, sorry.
I was going to say a pause on Muslim immigration totally, because I don't think there's any way to differentiate between somebody coming here to make a new life, abide by the Constitution, and those who aren't. And I know entire countries don't allow Muslims to immigrate.
Yeah.
And
Japan doesn't.
Japan doesn't, for one. Is that out of the question?
No, I think that's perfectly legitimate. The reality is America is in an undeclared war with Islam right now. Now, how much Nazi German immigration did you allow between 1941 and 1945? Zero.
Right.
So I think that's fair enough, absolutely fair enough. But I would actually go further. I think America could really do with a break from immigration full stop for a while. Because if that affects me, well, that's the way it is. But the reality is, up to World War II, around World War II, you were admitting a lot of immigrants. And they almost shut all immigration down for 50 years until Ted Kennedy opened it up again. Because they had to allow people to assimilate. They had to allow people to become Americans and become part of the culture. You know, and even when it increased again, it was up to 250,000 a year. Now it's well over 1 million a year. These are rates that are not sustainable if you want to keep your culture intact. So yeah, you know, it's your choice, but if I had to say, I would cut immigration right back full all across the board, but definitely from any Muslim countries, absolutely. Anybody involved in Islam, sorry, you go live in Saudi Arabia or Turkey or somewhere. Yes, sir.
I do have a couple of comments for you. Some number of years ago, Congressman Allen West came out and said that he believed that there were as many as 80 communists in our Congress. And he became a target, and they went after him. They redistricted him,
Yeah.
and then he was out of office. So he was one guy that came out and admitted part of the problem. And then another former congressman, Curtis Bauer, he did a DVD called
Jindal, yeah.
Okay, and the focus on his was the communist socialist network. But your DVD intertwined the Islamic problem and the alliance between some of our politicians with both parties, the communists and the Islamists. And I particularly like the part when you offered solutions at the end, where Bauer just says this is a problem, and he went through his evidence or his research saying that this is a problem. Like, you've got some solid recommendations there at the end. But I think that this could be a Trojan horse. The way that we're opening up our borders and allowing in these Muslims, it's like a Trojan horse.
Absolutely.
And France and other countries in Europe have these no-go zones where you.
Oh no, they don't exist. The media.
You get these Muslims all in these communities, and the authorities and the police are not allowed to go in there to enforce the law. And among their own community, they impose Sharia law, and they've got their own Sharia courts and so forth. And I think this is a Trojan horse if we allow it to continue.
Look, absolutely. See, it's not, the terrorists aren't the real problem. They are a problem, believe me. But the real problem, long term, is Islamic immigration. Because they have no intention of becoming Americans. They have their intention is to make America an Islamic province. That's what their intention is. As Bobby Jindal had a great line, immigration without assimilation is invasion. And that's exactly what this is. And so I said that thing about the Muslim Brotherhood Designation Act. That one act would shut down CARE, ISNA, ICNA, MAS, the whole lot. Would make it illegal for all these congressmen to work with them. They wouldn't be allowed to work with your school boards. They wouldn't be able to work with your FBI and your Homeland Security and your State Department as they're doing now. That one thing would do more damage to Islamic infiltration than anything else.
What act is that?
They've got a whole bunch of sponsors now. It's not that far away from passing. It's being held up in the House by that idiot from Kentucky, the senator, and in the Senate, and it's being held up in the House by Paul Ryan right now. But I'll tell you, the next Congress, hopefully we'll be able to pass that.
Could we have more information on that? And would it be a good idea for us to start a petition drive to send in huge numbers, sign petitions against that? Absolutely. It's just, you look it up, it's House Resolution 3892. But do you suggest
I do.
petition or separate?
I do. Any way you can do it. You Twitter it, you do a petition, do Facebook petitions, whatever. This should be a huge issue, because that one law would do more good for your country security-wise than virtually anything else. And they've even got 2 Democrats signed onto it. So I don't know who they are. I bet you're not very popular in their own caucus, but so yes, that's why we put it there, because we think that's hugely important. Petitions, Twittering it, anything you can do to get that, to raise the profile of that bill. Ted Cruz is supporting it in the Senate, and Bob Goodlatte is driving it in the House.
Where does it stand right now?
It's sort of in limbo at the moment. They've got a whole bunch of people signed on to the Senate version and the House version, but it's not being brought forward by either of the 2 House leaders, the Senate leader and the House leader.
Do you think the massive signatures might push it further?
Yeah, exactly, because they're getting like Dave Bratt just signed on to the other day, for instance, in Virginia. They're getting more people on every day. So yes, a petition would probably help that. Anything you can do to raise its visibility and its urgency would be very, very valuable.
Over here.
Sorry. Yes, sir. Yeah.
I want to thank you for coming to Nashua tonight.
My pleasure.
Showing your documentary here. I've got one question. You've done great research on Hillary Clinton. I was wondering if you did any research on Donald Trump and if you could shed some light on his background.
Yeah. Look, right. This is how I see it, right? I've been a big Ted Cruz supporter all the way through, okay?
Amen.
Okay? But I am not here to champion Ted Cruz tonight or to criticize Donald Trump. I see a lot of faults in Mr. Trump. I was very critical of his ties to the Russians through Paul Manafort, etc. But he has sacked Manafort. My view is right now, I want Trump to win, right? Because if Trump doesn't win, there is never going to be a Cruz presidency or any other conservative presidency ever again. That's the reality. Because just immigration amnesty alone is going to make it impossible to ever elect another Republican president. Well, tell me where my math is wrong. You know, Mitt Romney lost by 2.5 million votes. There's between 12 and 40 million illegals here, 75% of whom who vote Democrat. How do we win ever again? How do we do it?
Game over.
Well, there's always miracles, but you don't rely, just straight out math. As any accountant will tell you, the bottom line is always the bottom line. So my view is, Donald Trump has his problems. He was very heavily involved. He's got some deals with the Russians going on, but he has sacked Manafort, which is great. I regarded Manafort as a KGB agent. I don't like a lot of the things he says or does, but he has got good people around him like Mike Pence and Senator Sessions. I know that if Senator Sessions is there, the wall will be built. Or there'll be a hell of a civil war if there isn't, I'll tell you. So I don't know what you want me to say. I was Ted Cruz all the way. I'm still Ted Cruz all the way. But I want Ted Cruz to be the president in 2020. And the only way I can see that is going to happen is if we beat Hillary Clinton in this election. If anybody else can tell me another way, and you got to give Mr. Trump credit. He's been a lot more on message recently. A lot more presidential than he had been in the past, so let us hope that continues for all of our sakes. Karen.
Trevor, thank you for doing all you've done, first of all. But one of the things you touched upon in the movie that is probably not well known is that our armed forces, our first defenders, our first responders, our police, anybody who has any ability to be our first defense line has been denied the ability to know the enemy.
Yep.
So, do you have any suggestions about what we might be able to do as citizens to enable that wall to be broken down? Because it is coming from within that restricts their ability to have this information.
Look, all I can say is quite honestly, we have to change the government. You're not going to fix voting fraud in this country while you have a Democrat-controlled Justice Department. You're not going to fix the gutting of the military or the binding of your security forces or the federalization of the police or the police murders that are going on, driven by the Marxist Black Lives Matter movement, which is empowered by this government. None of that's going to change unless we change the government. And I'm sorry, there's no simple answer to it. What I say is this, I think there are still a lot of Republicans in this country who have no idea of what they're facing. They think this is still the old Democratic Party of Harry Truman and JFK. This is now a Marxist, Muslim Brotherhood controlled Democratic Party. And if they get power one more time, they're going to strip your Supreme Court, they're going to take away your First and Second Amendment rights, they're going to flood this country with illegal immigrants till they're coming out your ears, they're going to flood this country with Islamic refugees and put them in conservative communities all over the country to destroy your voting base. They aim to establish a one-party state in the next election cycle, people. Does anybody think I'm exaggerating?
No.
So how urgent is it, folks? We cannot stand back from this election and say we're going to rebuild the constitutional movement in, 20 years' time or 30 years' time. There will not be a 20-year or 30-year time. You will be outnumbered in your own country permanently. That is their intention. They're not doing all this for fun, people. And if you have some sort of armed rebellion and you think you're going to go and march on Washington and take it all back, just remember the Russians have between 3 and 7 times more nukes than you have. How long do you think it'll be before they use them against you, people? But John.
Trevor, the first time that I heard you speak, you talked a lot about your website and the information that was contained within it, and I wish you'd share that with this group. But the other thing that blew myself and my wife away was when we were out in Western Massachusetts, and this woman, when you were talking about so many people who were elected to the federal government, how many people are, supporters of the Communist Party, the Socialist Pact. And I'll never forget this woman, I think it was, it was in Hadley or something like that, and she says, but it can't be right here in my own state. Would you share, granted I'm from Massachusetts, and I think the vast majority of you were from New Hampshire, but can you share, just look around, let's say southern New England a little bit, and just name some of the people who are so deep in debt with the people we're talking about tonight?
Well, if you look at Massachusetts, both Markey and Elizabeth Warren are heavily in bed with Democratic Socialists of America. So McGovern was involved with Jim McGovern was involved with the Marxist narco-terrorists in Colombia, huge communist ties. You've got, who else is there? Songus,
John Kerry.
John Kerry has Marxist ties going back forever. Turney is just out now, but he was in the movie. He was heavily involved with Democratic Socialists for years. There's at least 30 members of the Massachusetts State Legislature, the Senate, and probably 40 in the legislature who have Democratic Socialists of America ties. Massachusetts was a red state once, but the Marxists took it over in the 60s. They got inside the Democratic Party, they took over the unions, and they turned that state permanently blue, just as they did to California, just as they're now doing to Colorado, and just as they intend to do to Texas. And if they get Texas, people, you can forget it, because they will have so much of the Electoral College, it cannot be beaten. They're that far away. People say communism died 25 years ago. I'm saying you're 4 months away, people, from having them take over this country.
Can you just real quickly talk about your website and the navigating through it?
Well, I've got a website, trevorloudon.com, my daily blog, but there's also a website I have called KeyWiki, Keywiki. Works just like Wikipedia. I've got 74,000 files on there of American politicians, communists, Marxists, anarchists, peace activists, anyone from Obama right through your Democratic Senate, all your Democratic congressmen, whole bunch of state legislatures, whole lot of people from New Hampshire. You can go there and look up the backgrounds of these people. I have this. You see the things I say here, people. You think if I was saying anything wrong, I would have been sued by now?
Yes.
Well, I never have been. I've never been challenged on a point of fact. Not once. I've written hundreds of articles and 2 700-page books and put out the movie. We'll see how we go with this one, eh? But yes, sir.
Mr. Loudon, I was going to ask you this question after the meeting, but I feel compelled to ask it in public in front of you folks, because the thing that really troubles me the most is I live in a little town an hour and 20 minutes north of here. 2,200 people. In my monthly newspaper, we're the home of a prep school. I don't want to give away the town, but I was born and raised there. My family owned the biggest business there. My great-grandfather established it, and it was a great place to grow up. And I am absolutely stunned by how it's changed. Because of the Prep School Association, we've got some 80-year-old Marxists in our town that lived amongst us like embedded for 50 years and said nothing. And we thought that they were great people and we loved them and they did great things in the town. And they are emboldened now. In my little town's newspaper, a monthly newspaper, they advertised that on the 26th of September, in the town hall, in the meeting room, in the basement of the town hall, that I built, by the way, one of the last construction projects I did before I started this new business with my wife, Robert Aziz, a self-professed journalist, they're hosting a meeting in this little town in Southfield, New Hampshire. Used to be a pretty conservative town. Ask a Muslim anything.
Robert Aziz, yeah, I know, yeah, I've heard of him, yeah.
Well, the bottom line is, how do we start this at the grassroots? Because I feel like there's an army of these people out there. We could single-handedly wipe out every one of these people in this election, and it'd still be thousands and thousands of behind them. How can we, as common citizenry, combat this crap that goes on in these meetings with these Marxists?
Well, everybody here is battling these people at a local level, whether you understand they're Marxists or not. You're battling people on the school boards and against Common Core and people trying to take away your Second Amendment rights. You're doing it all the time, folks. You may not realize these people are communists, but most of them are. So, but there is this guerrilla battle going on right across America. So you need to know exactly who your enemy is. That's one thing. But it really does have to go to the top. You know, America does have to get serious about internal security again. Why I suggest the Muslim Brotherhood bill is because most Americans have no idea there's a communist threat, but they at least have an idea there's an Islamic threat. And if you can get them, that organization on the radar, the Muslim Brotherhood, that is going to, and let the FBI loose on them and shut them down and put people in jail, that is going to lead to the Marxists, because they are in there. They are working together hand in glove. That's going to create an understanding in America that there are security threats, and that's going to filter down to your local police departments, etc. Because almost every large city years ago had its own intelligence department. The police had their own intelligence service that went after radicals, infiltrated local radical groups, and kept an eye on them. That has to start up again. And then when you've got that structure, you are able to get the citizenry, and restart loyalty oaths for your public servants, etc. So so there's a whole raft of things that have to happen, because American security has gone from being very good to almost non-existent, except when you go through airports and they hassle you, which is perfectly ineffective. All the good stuff's gone and they just leave the police state stuff to hassle you. So I think the first step is we've got to win the election and we've got to get that bill passed, and then that makes it legitimate that there are internal and terrorist threats and Sharia law threats in your country. And when that's established, that's a precedent, and you can work your way down into the local areas, and then you can say, well, they're setting up a mosque in this town, and the guy who wants to set it up belongs to ISNA, and that's a designated Muslim Brotherhood front. Guess what? You can't come here. You have leverage then. You've actually got something to stand on. But right now you just say, well, he's a Muslim. Well, so what? But if the Muslim Brotherhood is designated as terrorists and you can prove a connection, you have got a lot more standing to shut these people down and shut these people up. And I think that's the first thing we have to do.
Can you repeat what we saw? It was too quick, the bill?
House Resolution 3892.
Otherwise known as?
The Muslim Brotherhood Terrorist Designation Act. And there's a companion bill in the Senate, but I just can't remember what that is, SS something. But you just Google Muslim Brotherhood Terrorist Designation Act and you'll find lots of information about it online. I just talked to the man in the blue shirt first.
Hi. It seems to me that the mainstream media, the fourth estate, has become the fifth column.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of...
You noticed?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that is a terrible disadvantage we seem to have in terms of having information disseminated so we truly understand the nature and size of this threat. What do you think about that?
Well, you know, we got to bypass the media. Curtis Bowers did his Agenda movie, and he estimates 10 million people saw that movie. And he basically just sold it out the back of his vehicle, you know, for a couple of years around the country. I know a lot of people here have seen it. Well, we want over the next year, and especially over the next 2 months, we want a couple of million Americans to see this movie. And that means buying a couple of DVDs, showing little house parties in your house, bringing friends along, you know, take it to your local tea party, your Republican club, your church, or whatever. So we want to increase the grassroots awareness, because the mainstream media is responsive to public pressure to a degree, but they're also more tied into the Democratic Party power structures. So the first thing to do is make sure that the Democratic Party is not in power, because that reduces the confidence of the media and reduces their aggressiveness against us. So that's one step. Then we have to encourage our own media, the Glenn Becks and the Breitbarts and all the other factors we have. And we have to take it back. But I come back to this thing. If we can get the Muslim Brotherhood as a designated terrorist organisation, that gives us standing to go on the offensive. We're not just on the, the media comes and says, why are you hassling this mosque? Why don't you want these Muslim people talking to your schools? Well, say because the man who's coming here belongs to ISNA, which is a designated terrorist organisation. Do you support that? We've got to get that first foothold and a base to work on. We cannot fight a war if we do not have that base. If we cannot name the enemy and prove the enemy is an enemy, then we can't do anything else. But that's why we're doing the movie, because do you think the mainstream media would ever show a movie like this?
No, never.
I'll tell you, a lot of conservative media will not show this. I'll tell you straight, because it's a little bit too controversial, and they might want to have some of these congressmen on, and they play golf with some of these congressmen, so we don't want to upset the apple cart. But we honestly think if 2 or 3 million people see this before the election, we think it could make a half or a 1% difference, and that could be all it takes. We've seen the election in 2000, what won by 500 votes, was it? We've got to think about the Senate, we've got to think about the House, the state legislatures. It's no good having a Republican president with a Democratic Senate. And in your own state that's a tricky proposition right now. So and I'm not a pro-rhino sort of person, but when it's the difference between a rhino and a communist Democrat, I know who I'll go for.
Trevor,
We got one more quick question.
There's one thing that's going on right now that people aren't aware of. Workforce housing is already being implemented and in the process. Londonderry, New Hampshire, right now is in the process of workforce housing. And why would we need workforce housing? To house all these immigrants?
Yeah, well, there's that. The other thing they're doing is all new housing developments got to go through HUD, which is run by the communist Julian Castro. basically you're going to have quotas in your new housing developments. So you don't just go and build a development and sell to the people you want to. You're going to have so many refugees, you're going to have so many African Americans, you're going to have so many Muslims, you're going to have a mix. So the aim is to basically destroy the conservative strongholds in this country. You know, to basically, like I was in St. Cloud, Minnesota, right? That's Michele Bachmann's old district. Most conservative part of Minnesota. 60,000 people in that town, 20,000 of them are Somali Muslim refugees. When they are all given voting rights, you think they're all going to be good conservatives? That is one more Democratic seat right there. And that's going to happen all over the country. They're going to pick up these little conservative areas, and you're going to get a few thousand Iraqis in your area, and they're all going to become good little Democrats when the time comes. Just very quick.
Yes. One America News Network.
Yeah, yeah.
I've seen Clinton Cash on that television network time and time and time again.
Yeah.
That may be a good television.
We are working to get something on there, yeah, absolutely, whether a part of the movie or something. But I just want to say, look, the movie's not going to come out on DVD till Thursday because I told you we had a little problem with the insurance, and I'm sure you can see why. Can you not? Okay. I was shocked when they did insure it, right? Okay. But anyway, so the movie's out on Thursday. Please go up, sign a little form, order the movies today, get 1 or 5 or 10 or whatever you want, and we will post them out to you, to your house as soon as they're ready, and then you can hold little parties in your house or take them to your church or give one to your liberal uncle, whatever you want, you know. But sorry? Yeah, you can, trevorloudon.com, and go to the icon on the right. I think it still says fund this movie, but you just go there and you can order DVDs online.
Thank God for you.
Yeah, well, thank you. But I just want to say, folks, you know, please support the cause because I think this is all going to help us all. But I just want to say thank you so much to the 603 Alliance for what you're doing in this state, because this is a vital state and you're holding the line here. And I've got to know a lot of you over the last couple of years, and I count several of you as very good friends. And it's a real thrill when Victoria and I get an invitation to New Hampshire, I'll tell you. We can't keep away from the place. We'd be here more often if we could. So I want to thank you for coming tonight, and thank you for your hospitality, but most of all, to thank you for your patriotism and hard work. God bless you all. Thank you.